Good afternoon. I'm Kara Kane, Executive Director of the Fishoff National Chamber Music Association. Each May, we are delighted to bring the nation's largest and longest running chamber music competition to all of you at the University of Notre Dame, in the DeBartolo Performing Arts Center, and the O'Neill School of Music on Notre Dame's campus. Right now, I'm here with our 2019 Senior Strings winner, our gold medalist winner, the Merz Trio. They are right now coming to us out of Boston, Massachusetts, where they're the professional trio in residence at the New England Conservatory. We are here celebrating with them the release of the second part of one of their gold medal prizes, which was a video recording sponsored through Darton and Hirsch Fine Violins and their Guarneri Hall nonprofit arm. We wanted to bring you guys back together and reintroduce our audience to you guys. So I was hoping Lee, Julia, and Bridget, you could do a quick introduction, but also just let us know a little bit about the Merz Trio, who you are, your mission. So welcome back.
Thank you, Kara. It's great to be talking again at around the same time of year that we were doing or thinking about getting ready for the tour last year. And Fishoff has been definitely a real landmark for us at different stages of our career as a trio. We actually won our second time going there, and then we went back for the tour in the fall. So it was 3 times total that we went out. I'm Lee. I'm the pianist of the Merz Trio. We all met in different stages. Bridget the violinist, and I met at Yellow Bar Music Festival, and we both met Julia actually in New York, where she and I did the Ensemble Connect program together. And so now we're going into our 4th year together as a trio, and it's been a journey, a couple years in New York. We moved to Boston last summer. I was at Yale School of Music before, and I also studied a bit in Berlin, but we formed outside of an institution actually as an ensemble, so a little bit of a later start than many groups. Anyway, I'll let the others introduce themselves and go on with our history.
So I'm Julia. I'm the cellist of the Merz Trio, and I was at Northwestern for my undergrad and the New England Conservatory for grad school. And I'm very happy to be back a number of years later with the trio for this residency. And you asked a little bit about Merz Trio, and I'm realizing that in the background of my screen and Lee's screen, we have several collages by our patron saint, Kurt Schwitters. He's the artist after whom we are named. He coined the term Merz, actually, which is a Dada term that doesn't really have a meaning, but he said that it actually means that everything is connected. And this is a little statement that you could say is behind a lot of what we do and are trying to do as a trio. So our medium, of course, is not visual arts, it's the piano trio repertoire, it's classical music, and this is what we're working with, and yet our goal is to find connection, to find relevance, and to use that to work with, to speak with, to converse with other artists, and to present this work on stages of all different sorts. So that's a little bit about the trio.
Hi, I'm Bridget. I'm the violinist. I'm from Australia, so I've been in the States almost 5 years. I studied in Melbourne, which is where I'm from, in Australia, studied in London, the Royal College of Music, and yeah, been in New York and now in Boston, and Boston's pretty new for me, but I'm really enjoying getting to know, mostly it's parks at the moment, but it's definitely been an experience. And just to follow on from what Julie was saying about Merz, I think one of the things that was important for each of us, especially because we were coming to this ensemble, you know, we weren't 18 and we're a little bit older, and we have all sorts of other interests outside of music as well that aren't necessarily hobbies as such, but are things that we think of as part of ourselves and that we like to bring into our music. They often form part of our rehearsals, how we speak about what we do, and just by virtue of being our interests, they're inevitably integrated into how we think and how we play ultimately. So it was actually very important for us when we were starting out, even just talking about music making, to find a way of integrating these other aspects of our lives and other aspects of our music making. We wanted to foreground them more, to bring them into conversation with our audience, to allow people to see the things that were building up what they saw on stage.
Yeah, and you guys have done quite a bit of that, which will tie nicely into the second part of your experience at Fischoff. You know, this time last year, you were preparing for your gold medal tour. But if I can rewind just a little before that, to your journey to the Fischoff competition, you mentioned that you had come. This was the second time you'd come. You guys were not all joined together through one university experience, but had picked and, you know, found each other separately. So what was it that drew you to the Fischoff competition as a trio to be part of it?
Okay, well, it's kind of funny. So I guess we had decided to form in January 2017. And we were all doing very different things and had pretty busy lives outside of, you know, this new entity that we were starting. And we realized that we needed some pretty big goals to glue us together in the beginning, and to actually also test us and to see if, you know, is this really what we want to do? Because this could be a huge commitment to form an ensemble together. We were like, why don't we try doing some competitions? So we very intensely rehearsed for you know, several weeks and made these recordings, and we're really excited to get into Fischoff and this other competition, and we didn't pass the first round. And so it was really crazy for us because, of course, you know, we had only been playing maybe 3 months together, so 4 months together. And for some groups, perhaps this would have been the point at which you break up and you're like, oh, we're just not meant to be. We're just not good enough. But actually, I think for us, it was very strengthening because even though it didn't pan out that first time in terms of the competition, we were able to see how well we worked together as an ensemble, as people, and all these different shared goals that went beyond just the 2 pieces that we were preparing for this competition. And it spurred a lot of conversation and just this drive to do better and to get better and to form a stronger group. So that was the first time.
Okay. And then the second time, I mean, because when you guys came, I remember taking you to a practice room for one of the final rounds, and you guys were focused. You were ready to go. Not that all of our groups are. I mean, to speak to you saying you didn't make it in the first round. I mean, this year we had 130 ensembles applying for 48 spots in the quarterfinals. So these are incredible musicians across several continents, and so there's a long line of people that don't get in there that are phenomenal and go on to great careers. So maybe you can speak to, once you were here, right? You guys had clearly worked really hard to get here. What was that process like, going through all the rounds and then finally making it to the finals?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I mean, I think that it was actually enormously beneficial to have already done it once, even if we didn't pass the first round, because I mean, that's really handy knowledge right there. You know the kind of spaces that you're going to be working in, you know the specific conditions that you're working under, and it's really important to understand that competitions are competitions. They're not necessarily mimicking your experience giving performances in real life. They're very specific scenarios, and you know, Fischoff in particular has very specific conditions that you're working under, and so it's really helpful if you have that prior knowledge. So the second time that we went into the competition, we were just better informed, and we were really strategic about it. We prepared ourselves, we, you know, trained ourselves for that specific environment, and we just, you know, we went about it in a really logical, measured manner. We had enough time. We were really lucky because by that stage we were working with the wonderful faculty at the New England Conservatory as part of our residency. So we were able to be very targeted and strategic in our approach with them as well. And it was just great to have, you know, lots of people who knew us well enough by then to be able to comment in really helpful ways. It just felt like, we were a little bit older as an ensemble, and so we'd had more time together. We'd had time to mature, and I think that's one of the key things. You know, when you start out, you're so full of enthusiasm and energy, and you have to learn patience, which doesn't always come naturally to all of us. I'm raising my hand here. Yeah, so we had learned patience, and we just had more experience, and we knew each other better. We had time to, you know, understand what we were, what each of us were as individuals, but also what we were as a collective, which is critical, obviously, in ensemble playing. And yeah, and we just had a good lead up. We prepared well, and that's really important, because when you go into a competition, especially one like the Fish-Off, where you have so many stages in such a relatively, you know, a short space of time, and it's high adrenaline and quite intense, and it can be very exhausting, especially once you get to the fourth round and you think, oh my God, I have to walk on this stage again and play again, you know, and it's exciting, but you're really tired at that point. And so it's great if you can just think to yourselves, you know what, we've done everything that we possibly could to be as prepared as we possibly can. And beyond that, we have no control. We really have no control. The only thing that we can control is being able to walk on stage, feel relatively good about ourselves, and enjoy it. And after that, anything else is a bonus. So it felt liberating to have that preparation, because it meant that we could be very free and be ourselves on stage. And I think that's all you can really ask from a competition scenario.
Right. So it sounds like your preparation was very meticulous. You knew, when you talk about strategic, I'm assuming you also mean your repertoire choices, sort of your pacing of how to go through each of these rounds to give enough, but not give too much that you don't have enough left for the next round.
Yeah.
Do you guys have maybe a sort of Fish-Off moment or sort of a turning point there where you felt like, oh man, we're really gelling as a group, and this has been a great forum for us to express who we are?
At the competition itself, I think we all felt really good about our final round. But I think that was maybe where we peaked, just in terms of our personal feeling about how we played. The grand finals were maybe a little exhausting at that point, and there's still a lot of nerves with the semis because it's the first time you play that program. But we basically, I forget if every group did this, but we repeated exactly the same program in our final round, because we just felt like it was really strong. We had been really strategic about it, and I think at that point we had just totally let go, and we're really enjoying ourselves.
Well, we were delighted that you guys won the gold medal and came back last fall. You really enchanted the audiences, both the students as well as our donors and general audience members at a great soiree that really holds a really dear spot in my heart at Ida and Perry Watson's. But let's talk a little bit about when you came back. I mean, you guys had just come off winning the Concert Artists Guild. So you had a ton of momentum coming along with you. You came and you did performances, culminating in a live recording at St. Myra Hess, and then also this video recording that we're gonna be seeing on August 4th, that'll be premiering here and through Gornery Hall. But maybe you could speak a little bit about what it was like to come back as the gold medalist, be in the schools, work with, younger kids. I mean, you were at the Civic Center for Arts and Civic Innovation with small kids doing a stories and music and Mad Libs, all the way to, pretty accomplished high school students that were really thinking about how they could hone their own technical abilities to be musicians, hopefully. So talk a little bit about you coming back this time last year.
Well, just as an overall experience, I think every time we've been to Fish Off, it's been humbling in a different way. And I really felt that about the tour. Coming off of the Concert Artists Guild competition, I think this was the beginning of a year where we were starting to really push ourselves in terms of um, how much we could be doing at a given time, how um, broadly we could be um, developing in terms of repertoire. So with the Concert Artists Guild competition, for instance, we had discussed our repertoire a lot for that. We decided to play similar repertoire to Fish Off with a few new additions, but we really wanted to play the Brahms B Major Trio on the Fish Off tour because we felt like this was just such an incredible piece, and we felt like it wasn't exactly a competition piece, but we scheduled it to perform at Fish Off like the next week, and then we had this week of just playing it concert after concert, but without a lot of preparation time. It was a piece we'd played a few times before, but this was our first time just kind of running it through a tour without a lot of rehearsal, and it felt great. And similarly, the outreach felt great in that sense. Like we'd all done a lot of outreach before, but never kind of day after day, and just having to show up and perform. And there was something, I mean, and we're a group that's performed a lot, both individually and together. And yet there was something about the tour that really pushed us in that way, and that felt really substantial and fulfilling as an experience. So I think we all felt like we grew a lot in the course of the week.
Yeah, it was just incredible seeing you guys pivot from, dealing with technique, with one-on-one, with groups, with chamber groups. I know at one point you were working with the orchestra up in St. Joe, Michigan. Bridget, you were talking about gypsy melodies with the Dvorak, and how you guys could switch was incredible to then just connecting with the groups. I remember, Julia, you did an example just to connect with the groups of, oh, here's how I warm up every day. I do this Bach suite just to warm up. That's what I do every day. And it was just amazing. And then you would walk on stage at the Watsons, and you're quoting poetry in between these pieces, saying, "Oh, here's why we love this Widmung, and here's a contemporary poet who has the same sentiment." So that was really neat. With Julia or Bridget, were you guys going to add something?
Oh, do you want to go?
Oh, yeah. Well, I was going to say, Kara, I think you say it better than we could say it. But I think one of the things that we loved about this tour that we were talking about while even we were on it was just the engagement that we got with all the different layers of the communities that we were engaging with. So of course in the evenings we would have these performances, and you would speak from the stage and be able to share your music and play in that way. But actually it was so rewarding during the day to work with students, as you said, high school students one-on-one, or we would coach these chamber groups and talk about bass lines, or Bridget would go and talk about the big characters and all these stories. And we would just we had so much fun in those various settings. And then of course in the salon, as you said as well, that was a completely different experience and something that we've done several times now and are quite passionate about, which is presenting different pieces, often shorter selections, and perhaps pairing them with wines or small dishes and poetry or readings. And it's just a very informal but approachable way to take in this music, I think, and for us to present it, because it's just matching a bunch of things that we love together.
Yeah, and I think that especially integrating the work with ensembles and in the schools alongside performing, that's a very intense experience, but it's also so interesting for us ultimately. It shows, as we hope that we can be helpful or at least entertaining for the kids that we're working with. But honestly, most of the time they give us so much as well to think about. And it's kind of amazing to, be somewhere in the afternoon and be articulating all these things that, maybe are not at the forefront of your mind as a performer all of the time, and you're articulating them for a younger audience. And then to walk on stage a couple of hours later and have those, almost in your mind as part of what you're doing. And that's, I just found that a really interesting and very rewarding coupling of experiences.
Yeah, well, I love how you guys really would dig into the material. I know one of the pieces that you had brought to the forefront was a piece by Alban Berg that actually was the first recording that you did at Guarneri Hall. So for those of you that want to see the beginning bookend, you can tune in and take a quick peek at that. But I know at first I had a little trepidation of, oh my gosh, this is heavy stuff, Alban Berg. But we went to Goshen High School, and the kids there, in some ways it was a clean slate because kids didn't know, you know, you go in with a Beethoven or a Brahms or a Mozart, they've heard that, they think, oh, there's a right way to talk about this. But the Berg, it was so mysterious and so sort of ethereal. I think, Bridget, you refer to it as a sort of fairy music. And then all of a sudden the kids were like, oh, this sounds like Star Wars, or this sounds like death, or, you know, all of a sudden they had the freedom to say whatever, and there wasn't necessarily a right or wrong. So I thought that was really opening, you know, eye-opening for the kids to have to dig deep and not feel like there were prescribed ways they had to listen to it. Now, during this, what would you guys say your biggest takeaway is? It sounds like there were so many levels of pushing yourself, pacing, wearing many hats. When you walked away from this, what was maybe one of your biggest lessons learned or takeaways that you could share with other ensembles?
You know, as I'm reflecting on everything that we're discussing, from like our first experience at Fischoff to, you know, what it was like to go through all 4 rounds and then the tour, my biggest takeaway is just that, you know, this is such a hard business that we're in, of, you know, making a career as a young chamber ensemble, and we're lucky to have met more and more groups who are kind of in the same place doing the same thing. But when we started out as a group, we were all fortunate enough, I think, to be advanced enough to have a lot of confidence in our abilities. You know, we were all performing a lot, felt fairly secure professionally. But then I think we learned that playing together in an ensemble is just a completely different thing, and it's a completely different experience and skill that needs to be developed in the same way that you would develop your own ability going through conservatories, going through different programs. And we didn't even really have that. We had to seek out a lot of professional development on our own, and we're lucky enough to get the NEC thing. So just going through all these competitions, I think from the very beginning, we were always meticulously prepared. We were always playing at that really high level. But what we gained, I think, from more and more of these experiences, and then ultimately experiences like this tour, was realizing that the most important thing we could do was to really let go and trust ourselves and really take care of each other as well. And that if we are kind of there for each other as people, knowing that this is like a really long commitment and that we're really committed to growing and developing together, then that's what's going to take us the furthest in the long run. It's not striving for a kind of perfectionism at the cost of everything else, which I think it's easy to get in that mindset, and it's really good if you can live outside of it, if you have the wiggle room to do so.
Well, we are going to see on August 4th the premiere of your video release of your second piece. So through the competition, Barton and Hirschfein Violins was amazing to start a new partnership with us. And what they've created at Guarneri Hall is a beautiful small studio space that is acoustically stunning. And they have a great creative team that comes in to really try to capture chamber music performance, to give that same spark and that same feeling of connectivity, of being in the room and having this sort of aural sound around you that surrounds you, and being there with musicians, you know, because I think, you know, I know Bridget, you've got a theater background, and, you know, Lee, you're sort of the resident musicologist and arranger, and, you know, you guys each have your personalities that delve in a really interesting way beyond just performing. As you said, you guys were more than proficient in the technical aspects of playing music, but coming together as an ensemble, you guys chose specific repertoire that capture the essence of who you are, the stories you want to tell. And maybe you could talk a little bit about when this opportunity presented itself, you know, this prize, like how did this process work? I mean, how do you guys really think about reimagining presenting your work in a video format, so that's not an archival capture of that experience, but really captures the essence of these amazing works?
Yeah, so it's something that we're actually thinking about even today. After this interview, we'll have a meeting with a young videographer who we'll be working with to record a new arrangement of a Brahms song, Opus 91, and that's sort of, it's an ongoing question how you imagine these videos. So we've been doing some of our own research, looking at Trifonov's videos, for instance, which are stunning, and having conversations about what does this music evoke and how can this be presented in images. In fact, actually, it was in May, after Fish Off and before our tour, that we recorded 3 other music videos, and that was something that we had been actively thinking about. Just small things such as what angle in the hall should we be filming in, or in a most recent video that we're also about to release of Charlotte Bray, how can we use color and or the lack of color to portray some of these characters and feelings in the music. And it feels like we're new at this and we're experimenting, but and this is not our natural or our first go-to studied medium of film, and yet it's so hand in hand with what we do, because as we play, of course, we are being seen, and it is something visual, and that's also capturing your imagination. And this is just one way that we can work to heighten that sense as well, and to make some more connections with it.
What was the process like last fall when you guys were told, okay, you're going to have this time slot with Stefan and the team at Guarneri Hall? How did you guys pick your pieces? What was the planning process like?
I mean, it was great working with Stefan. Actually, is a lot more hands-off from our perspective in a lot of ways than making the other videos, because Stefan's an excellent musician and really comes in with a vision of how he can imagine the pieces coming together. He puts a lot of care into studying the score and thinking about it beforehand. So in a way, our biggest contribution was saying, hey, we want to record these new arrangements that we've done. And it was funny because at that stage, I think he was actually a little bit skeptical about the Berg because he hadn't heard it. And from our perspective as well, these were pieces that we just arranged. So we're being creative in that respect as well. And we've played them. They've been successful for us, but we also hadn't heard them. And it's great to record a new arrangement because nobody's heard it. So nobody really knows how it's supposed to sound. We don't even know exactly what we should be going for. We just, work at it really hard and sort of trust ourselves after a while. And then you see the videos, and then finally, oh, there's documented evidence that this is actually successful, and it's nice to be able to watch it and enjoy it. But I think for me, what's so great about Stefan in particular is just his musicality, and the fact that, as you were saying, all of those shots of, so-and-so has a solo here, or we're going to have a close-up on the piano, or we're going to go for this kind of mood for the overall piece. That's all just taken care of, and he's going to be so sensitive and perfect about that.
Yeah, I mean, the experience at Guarneri Hall was actually, it felt so luxurious in a way because of how little we had to really think about all of those different components that are inherently part of videoing music. And in a way, it was a really nice, it was a nice way for us to learn from somebody who's so experienced as Stefan, and who has obviously thought so much about that medium. And it's funny because we're speaking in this time where so much of our performance inevitably is online now, or at least at the moment. And Stefan and the whole Guarneri Hall project and those videos seem in a way so ahead of their time. And yeah, I mean, it's because it's so obvious now to many more of us. just that idea of videoing music, it's not you're not trying to capture just a live performance on film, because inevitably that will be a kind of shadow of the performance experience, the live experience, but it's its own medium that has to be investigated and treated with respect for that. And I think that there's something that, you know, we are all trying to investigate with the intimacy of that medium, that if you're watching something on a screen, it's often at the moment at least, in your private spaces, like your living room, in your home. And so there's a way in which the video, if it's done creatively and imaginatively, can often really capture the intimacy of that performance as well, you know, and meet the intimacy of the space. And I think that for chamber music in particular, where so much of what we do happens often in smaller, intimate spaces, and you're closer to the audience, so you're concentrating on that, and you're very aware of the physicality of what you're doing and also the responses of the people who are listening. I think that it can potentially be a really fruitful medium for our genre of music in particular.
And just to back up, I don't believe our audience knows the full background on this. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the arrangement of this. This is actually, you know, typically for voice and piano, and you, Lee, scored it for violin and cello. And like you said, the camera follows the different voicing and how you're passing the baton between violin and cello through this piece. So maybe you could talk a little bit about the genesis of this and how you guys created such a beautiful interplay to have the same, you know, sense of meaning without voice involved.
Yeah, well, as you mentioned, Kara, I was kind of the primary person on these arrangements, although actually we've now programmed a number of other arrangements for this coming season and for this upcoming album project that we'll also talk about a little bit. But yeah, we've started taking a much more collaborative approach to it as well, even just within the trio. And that was something that was there from the beginning, but maybe just a little bit time restrained when it came to scoring the Widmung and the Berg. But even so, I would bring in an arrangement and then we would mess around with it a little bit in rehearsal. And, you know, Julia would say, oh, I think this is really better in this octave, or even deciding like what key it's in. We transposed the Widmung. The Berg is in the original key, but there's also a lot of differences just in terms of who plays the vocal line when, since that writing is so contrapuntal and there are so many lines to choose from. So I think we all realize that it's just more organic and more interesting when we can have more of that collaboration involved as well. And so we've been thinking in that way for some of the arrangements we have coming up.
Well, it sounds like you guys learned quite a bit from this experience. I mean, you mentioned, Julia, that it felt, Bridget, you mentioned that it felt luxurious to be there, and Stefan and his team were kind of working the magic. What would you say, how has this then affected your subsequent creations of videos, where maybe the onus has been on you to either develop it or in choosing future creative teams that you're working with?
I mean, I think that it, I mean, just at a basic level, it's highlighted that the importance of the quality of it, you know, just in terms of the production, the basic production values, which are obviously just so extraordinary at Guarnieri Hall. And also, yeah, I mean, it's just trying to be more imaginative in the ways that we think about following the music with the kinds of shots that we're choosing, because now when we do it, we work with a sound engineer and then a separate videography team, or in this case with the one coming up, a single videographer, and then, you know, we're working on those two elements separately with both of those teams, and, you know, the three of us are responsible for a lot of decisions in terms of the edits that we're making and the kinds of shots that we're asking for. And, you know, now when we go in to these sorts of experiences, now that we have a little more experience ourselves in these kinds of projects, we can go in from the very beginning and say, you know, this is the way that we have understood this piece, and these are the kinds of shots that we're thinking about. And then it's a collaboration with the people that we're working with. So yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot that we can take from those videos that Stefan was responsible for.
So the last section, you know, I want people to be able to watch this because it's a stunning, I mean, even though it's a couple of minutes, it's amazing to think how much work goes into just those couple of minutes of beautiful music. Did you guys have any last thoughts? I didn't mean to cut off Bridget or Julia before, and just sort of the recap of the actual scenario, filming of it.
Oh, I also just have one comment about the arrangements in general. Lee was talking about the process of them, and I think that for us they're really important in our work as a trio, not only because they're just really enjoyable and it's lovely to have this sense of ownership and to be able to expand our repertoire, you know, into these really stunning songs in particular, but when we're working through you know, the nuts and bolts of the arrangement and putting it together, it's a really great way for us to think about how we understand the trio genre and the roles of each instrument in particular. It's a good way for us to evolve in our own understanding and to speak with each other about how we're imagining the ways that these instruments can interact, because of course every composer who writes for trio, you know, there might be a sort of general understanding of the way that this genre is operating, but then of course for each composer they have a different take on that, or they have a different relationship with those instruments individually and collectively. So it's lovely for us as an ensemble and as players to be able to have those sorts of conversations as we're constructing these arrangements.
Yeah, thank you. So just to wrap up, you guys are busy during this crazy time. Oh, actually, I take that back. I did want to talk just a little bit. Our initial release for this was supposed to be on Schumann's birthday in June, and we postponed it. Actually, you guys had asked us and Stefan if we could wait. And I thought, you know, it's so interesting coming, a couple things is coming back to this music now, so long after the fact. But what were your guys' thoughts around the original release date, and that really pushed you to want to wait?
So the initial release date was in early June, and as I'm sure the world remembers, this was just a little while after the death of George Floyd, and it was during the time that the Black Lives Matter movement was really ramping up, and all over our social media feeds and our consciousness and our friends and family's consciousness. And it was, I think, an incredibly emotionally volatile time, and a time for reflection, and a time that we felt pretty strongly was not necessarily the moment to be sharing this music. We had some really interesting discussions, I think, with Stefan, and very open discussions about the value of music and its absolute beauty, and while those things we feel are true, we were also saying that there's this time and a place to be able to celebrate life and joy and love, which we think is encompassed in this music that we're about to share in the Widmung, and other times that collectively are better for mourning or for grief or for just self-reflection. And so we believed, at least for ourselves personally, that week in June was that moment for us. And I think we're all very excited to be sharing this music now in the next week.
Yeah, well, thank you. I know that that was a tough decision. And like you said, it was an important time to just, I think, let other voices be heard that week, and take time for self-reflection. So thanks for opening those conversations. I know the conversation about Black Lives Matter has been important to Bischoff, and our many colleagues and friends that we want to make sure that we're supporting through all of this, and the voices that we want to make sure we amplify. So thanks for your thoughtfulness on that topic. Well, I'd love for you, actually, Julia, you had some news that you wanted to share with next projects that the Merz Trio is working on.
That's right. So, of course, this fall looks very different for us, for many musicians, probably every musician in the world. And so we'll be having a number of live streams and different events, which if you're interested in learning more about, please sign up on our newsletter at merztrio.com, and we'll be sending out some news about those upcoming events that we're planning. And I think the one project that we're most excited about is the recording of our very first album. And this is a project actually in a way closely related to Bischoff. We are performing on this album, or we are recording the Ravel Trio and Johannes Maria Staud's 10 miniatures, both of which were very integral parts of our Bischoff 2019 experience, as well as 3 new arrangements by Debussy, Viardot, and by Berg, which we had that video. So this is very new to us and also very exciting, and we hope that you all come along for the ride.
Well, thank you guys. It has been a pleasure seeing you. We wish you the best of luck in Boston, and wherever else it's taking you. I know, Bridget, you're finishing up some doctoral work, so best of luck with that. And also, please welcome this year's senior gold medalist, the Ballardet Quartet, that's going to be joining you out in Boston. Fingers crossed everybody gets there in one piece and healthy. So we look forward to sharing this Widmung video on August 4th, and I can't wait to see what else is in store for the Merz Trio. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Kara.